Hi, this is Anil from LearningLad and welcome to another video on Java programming language. In this video, we will see how we can write a simple Java program to display Floyd Triangle. Now, what exactly is this Floyd Triangle? Floyd Triangle is a right-angle triangle of natural numbers. It is created by filling the rows of the triangle with consecutive numbers starting from 1. Now, if you look at this image, then you can, easily understand what exactly it is. So here it is a right angle triangle. You guys can see it is in right angle triangle shape and it is filled with the consecutive natural numbers starting with 1. Now here in this triangle, this is the first row, this is the second row, this is the third row, and this is the fourth row. How many columns we have for every row? Now in the first row, we have only one column. In the first row, we have one column, and in the second row, we can see that we have 2 columns. In the third row, we can see that we have 3 columns, and in the fourth row, we have 4 columns. So now here we can say that the number of columns present in a row is equal to row number. And similarly, if I have to write the fifth row here, then the number here will be 11 because it is the consecutive natural numbers. Then 12, 13, 14, and 15. Since it is the fifth row, we will have 5 columns in this fifth row. Now to print this triangle, we need to understand that the number of columns present in a row is equal to row number. So in the fourth row, we have 4 columns. Okay, now let's see how we can print this triangle. Here I have written the skeleton of this Java program. I have created the package LearningLad, and then I have imported this scanner class. Now we will be using this scanner class for taking the input from the user. And then I have created this public class Floyd Triangle. And then we have this static void main method from which our program starts executing. Now here, how we are going to write this program is, first we will ask the user for how many rows he wants to print the triangle, and then depending on the user input, we will print the triangle. So we need to store the user input, and for that purpose, I will create a variable of integer type, and I'm going to call it as numRows for number of rows. Alright, now the next thing that we do is we will display a message asking the user to enter the number of rows. So we will do that by using system.out.println method, and here I'll say enter the number of rows. All right, now we have displayed the message to the user asking to enter the number of rows. Now the user will enter a value. Now we need to read that value and we need to store that in this numRows variable. So here what we do is we will use the scanner class, and for that purpose I will create an object of this scanner class. So it will be scanner, and I will call it as scan, which is the name of the object, equal to new scanner, and here we will pass in system.in. All right, now we have the object of this scanner class, and we can use this object and we can read the input. So we will use the next int method, which is available in this scanner class. It will read an integer value which is entered by the user, and it will return that. And we will store that returned value in this numRows variable. All right, now we have successfully read the value entered by the user, and we don't have anything else to read from the user. So I will close this scanner by using the close method. All right, now we know for how many rows we have to display this triangle. So we will start printing the triangle. Now if you look at this pattern here, then the values printed here are the consecutive natural numbers starting from 1. So I will create a variable here to store the number that we have to print, and I will call it as num, and I will initialize this variable with a value of 1, because if we look at this image, then the starting number is 1. All right, Now the next thing that we do is we will print each row one by one, and for that purpose we will use a for loop. And in this for loop we will create a variable, and I will call it as row, and I will initialize this variable with the value of 1, and then how many rows that we want to print, that will be the condition for this for loop. So it will be row less than or equal to. Now for how many rows we have to print this pattern, that value is stored in this numRows variable, which is entered by the user. So it will be numRows, and then after printing each row we will increment the value of this row variable so that it can work with the next row. So it will be row plus plus. Now here inside this for loop we will have the statements for printing the columns for this row, and after printing the column, the last thing that we do for a row is we will insert a new line. So the next row will be printed in the next line. So for that purpose we will use the system.out.println method. Here this statement will add only a new line, nothing else. Okay, now for every row we need to display the columns. Now the number of columns for a row depends on the row number, and for printing the columns we will use another for loop, and here also we need a variable for the loop count. So I will call it as column, and the column variable's value will start from 1. So I will initialize that with a value of 1, and then we need to have the condition. So how many columns we want to print for a particular row, that depends on the row number here. So that value is available to us in this row variable. So the condition here will be column less than or equal to row, and then after printing one column we will increment the value of this column variable. Now here for the first row, this row variable will contain a value of 1. So this for loop, this inner for loop will print only one column. That's because when this column variable contains a value of 1, this condition will satisfy, because 1 is less than or equal to 1, and it will print the number that we want to print, which we will write inside this for loop in a moment. And then this column variable's value is incremented by 1, and at that time this condition will fail. So for the first row it will display only one column, and then for the second row the row variable will contain a value of 2, and this time this for loop will run 2 times. That is when this column variable contains a value of 1, and when this column variable contains a value of 2. When this column variable contains a value of 3, this condition will fail, and then it will stop printing that column for that particular row. And then for the third row, this row variable will contain a value of 3, and this for loop will print 3 columns. Okay, similarly this loop will run according to our input. Now here what we want to print in that column, that we have to specify inside this inner for loop. So we will print the value for the column using the system.out, and I will use the format function here. If you want, you can use the println method and you can specify the value that we want to print, but I'm using this format method just because I can format the value that I want to print. Now here we want to print an integer number, so it will be %d, and what I want to do is I want to left justify the number which is printed with 5 character spaces. So I will use -5 here. So %-5d, and then what we want to print. So we want to print the number starting from 1. So that value is stored in this num variable. So I'm going to refer that num variable here. Now we know that in this pattern, the number which is printed here is in incremental order. So after printing the value stored in this num variable, we will increment the value of that num variable, so that the next time when it is printed, it will print the next number. Okay. Now we have written the code. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna build and run this. Enter the number of rows. I'll say 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. And you guys can see it has printed the Floyd triangle. I will run this again. And this time I'm gonna enter 20. And now you guys can see it has printed the Floyd triangle for this number 20. Now here I have used -5D here. This is to left justify the number which is printed with 5 character spaces. Now you can experiment with this number and you can use different numbers also here. Okay, so this is it guys. This is how you guys can write a simple Java program to print the Floyd triangle. Now if you like this video, hit the like button. If you don't like it, then hit the dislike button. If you want to say something, then write that in the comment box. And if you want to watch more tutorials like this, then do subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. I'll see you later in the next video.